right. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Thursday Live in the Kid Program Solutions group. For those of you who are new here, welcome to Kids Program Solutions in our group here. We do these lives every single week, Thursday at 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, constantly going over topics that we feel are going to be super beneficial to you guys as kids program owners or managers. And if you're joining us on YouTube, which means you'll be watching this a little bit later, no worries, that's totally fine. Do us a favor, if you like the content, please like, subscribe, do the whole deal. That helps us grow the channel, get it in front of more people like yourself who find this stuff beneficial. And if you find this beneficial today, do me a favor, share or send this to someone that you think it would help, okay? That all that stuff helps us get out there, increase the amount of people that we're able to help, and ultimately help refine the solutions that we're providing for you guys, which ultimately helps you in your particular situation. For those of you who do not know, myself, I'm Charlie. My wife and I own a company called Kids Program Solutions together. We've been in the kids industry collectively around 15, 16 years, and somewhere in that neighborhood, and we've been able to scale programs from 6,000 to 50,000. In 6 months, we've been able to help programs reach an over $1 million run rate annual revenue. We've been able to help programs. More recently, we've been doing a lot more work with helping people scale up and solve their staff issues so that they can scale their kids program. So if that sounds like you, then you're in the right place. We make these lives in an attempt to create a relationship with you and ultimately maybe one day be able to have the opportunity to work with you. Okay, so that's kind of all of our cards on the table. If you'd like to learn more, our group is a great place to go. So if you are watching this on YouTube, make sure you join our group for the lives every single week, because then you guys can actually catch stuff up to date, as well as participate in the lives, as well as some of the other questionnaires and stuff like that. We're just a lot more active in terms of Facebook and providing direct feedback, as well as some amazing free stuff to help your program, again, to just build that relationship with you. All right, so without further ado, let's get into it. So as you guys know, I like to keep these short, concise, but also extremely tactical so that you can get into using these right away. So today I've got 5 points for you, all right? 5 talking points that we're going to go through. And we're talking about conflict resolution mastery, okay? Achieving harmonious relationships with your team. And you might be asking, Charlie, what is the application of this? Well, here's the application. Many of you are going to have, not many of you, every single one of you is going to have conflict within the business. Okay, and the way that you are able to go around and handle that conflict, especially within your team, is a critical component of culture. Okay, so within your culture, if you are able to build a healthy conflict resolution strategy, a healthy conflict resolution approach, that's going to go a long way to creating a strong culture that ultimately our most desired outcome is that our culture becomes one that can solve conflicts on its own without someone having to constantly be the mediator, without someone having to constantly get involved and get in between these things. You want these conflicts to start to resolve on their own, but they don't always do that, okay? And so what I'm going to do today is give you some tactics that are good for you helping to resolve the conflict one-on-one with someone, as well as building these habits into your team so that your team is better at resolving conflicts themselves. Okay, so let's get started. Number 1, let's acknowledge and validate emotions. Okay, when conflicts arise, it's essential to acknowledge and validate the emotions of all parties involved. You must create a space where everyone feels heard and understood. This approach helps to build trust and encourages open communication. Okay, what do I mean by validate emotions? All right, so someone comes into the office, they're super angry about such and such is on their space today or in their way or was mean to them, okay, and said something that was offensive or whatever. And it was a genuinely offensive comment, right? I think in today's world, we're really adverse to this because it's like, oh man, I don't want to be an oversensitive workplace. I want people to feel like there's room for error, but there's also, making mistakes and people need to be called out on those mistakes. And so validating an emotion is simply saying, I hear what you're saying, and I also could see if I was the recipient of what happened, I could see how this would be frustrating or angering, right? That's acknowledging and validating emotions in the sense that I can understand that. But you also are removed from that circumstance, so you can also hear the other side of the argument. You can hear the other person's perspective to start to provide more of a balanced approach to what's happening. But it's really critical before you do anything for someone to feel like you've genuinely listened to where they're coming from and you genuinely understand why they're upset. Okay, it doesn't mean you have to agree with why they're upset. It just means you have to understand why they feel wronged, why they feel upset, and that's going to help them feel like you're actually attempting to solve the problem with them, as opposed to telling them to get lost or telling them just go do this and the problem's going to be resolved. Okay, so we need to start by first and foremost understanding that we're dealing with human beings. Human beings are first and foremost emotional creatures. That is the first standpoint that we have to understand. And so our emotions play a large role, especially when we want to have a problem resolved. Okay, so if you find yourself in a situation hearing someone talk about something that happened, a conflict that's arising, you need to first and foremost understand the emotions that are involved with all of this, because that is going to be crucial to you solving that problem moving down the road. All right? Okay, let's move on to the next one. So focus on interests, not positions. This one I'm going to camp on for a minute. In any conflict, people tend to take positions that are based on their beliefs, needs, and desires. Instead of focusing on these positions, you should focus on the underlying interests of all parties involved. This approach helps to find common ground and encourages compromise. So, in our political system, I'm going to go straight to politics because this is where I see this happen the most. Is I feel like there is a lot more agreement on what we want to accomplish. I think there's just a lot of disagreement in how we want to accomplish it. So what I mean by that is there are basic human needs and basic human desires that I think both sides of the aisle agree are important and should be met. But the way that we want to go about meeting them is completely different, right? You have different economic approaches, you have different policy approaches. And so ultimately, I feel like both sides have what they believe is a greater good that they're interested in. But the way that they want to go about achieving that, their i.e. position, and given in this example here, is that is where the difference lies. Okay, so when we're trying to resolve conflicts, what you should try to do is hear someone out and try to understand what is the thing that they're interested in accomplishing. What is the end goal that they want to accomplish? And let's see if we can't get there. Because what happens is maybe you don't like the approach, but you agree with the end goal, right? And so you want to go into the situation and say, hey, I hear what you want to accomplish. If you can retell it to them and say, hey, would you agree that this is the kind of the outcome that you want? And then they go, yeah, that's the outcome I want. This is how I think we get there. You say, well, I don't necessarily agree with how we're going to get there, but I do agree that the end goal is really important. What about this as a solution? Okay, and so that's where the arguments can become extremely constructive, because now you guys are arguing to a same endpoint. You may be coming from two different directions, but the endpoint is the same. So you're going to eventually coalesce. You're going to eventually run into each other and be like, yeah, this is a good common middle ground, right? That's what middle grounds are, is understanding where the two overlaps are and trying to drive the conversation, drive the resolution towards that middle ground. Now, that's not to say that someone's end goal is always a good end goal. Some end goals are bad end goals, and sometimes there doesn't need to be compromise, and that's okay, right? Sometimes, but that's where you as a leader have to have a lot of wisdom and a lot of care to listen carefully to what's being said, so that you can understand, hey, this is the end goal that they want to accomplish, and therefore I think that's a good end goal, but I don't necessarily agree with the approach on how they want to do it, right? So it's like if someone comes to you and says, hey, I want a pay raise because I think I should, I need more money, right? And so you're hearing, okay, I need more money. They don't necessarily want a pay raise. Maybe I could give them more hours and I have this opportunity over here, right? And so that's when you say, hey, I hear that you want to make more money. I can't necessarily justify a pay raise right now, but what I can do is give you 3 to 4 more hours a week, which would be the equivalent of a pay raise. And this is how we would accomplish that. And so that's a great way to kind of resolve that conflict, because I'm focusing on the end goal. I'm not necessarily focusing on them saying, hey, I want a pay raise, and I just go, no, you don't get a pay raise. What I say is, hey, I hear what you're saying. I can't necessarily justify a pay raise right now because I want to keep this fair and to all members of the team, and it's not time for a pay raise, but I can offer you the opportunity to earn more through more hours. I can do that, right? So it's a way of meeting those end goals and go from there. Encourage active listening. So you're going to see this be a constant theme. I think a lot of times when I'm doing presentations on resolving conflicts and building communication, a lot of times we spend way too much time trying to talk. Way too much time to talk. And I'll raise my hand. I am 100% the same way. As a human being, my dad used to have this saying, right? And it's one of the great things my father gave me, and I'll pass it on to you, which is you have 2 ears and you have 1 mouth, right? Which means you should do twice as much listening as you do speaking. And so always remember, when you're in a situation and you're talking to someone, I have 2 ears, I have 1 mouth. I have 2 ears, I have 1 mouth. Because I want to emphasize I should do double the listening as I do speaking, be slow to speak, quick to listen. And that way you will come off wise, you will come off patient, you'll come off understanding, and you'll actually be those things, right? If you try very, very, very hard to remain silent, to give the other person the room they need to speak, right, and hear out what they have to say, once they get repetitive, that's when you can kind of say, look, I understand, you made this point clear, like I understand what you're trying to say. Once they get repetitive, but if they're continuing to reveal new information each time that you're allowing them to talk, that means you need to keep letting them talk, because you need to get all of the facts out there. You need to get all the evidence out there, all the emotions out there, right? So that you can kind of gather it all up and say, okay, I've got it all right here in front of me. Now I can make a decision, as opposed to jumping to conclusions. Then they're not going to feel heard, and they're way less likely to accept the resolution. And if you try to cram it down their throat as a leader, that's where you get rebellion, and rebellion has crushed many, many businesses, many empires, many countries. So it's important to let your people feel heard and let them feel like you listened to the problem that they gave you, and then your solution was developed directly to answer the problem. Okay. Practice effective communication. Effective communication is key to conflict resolution mastery. Coaches must teach their team members to express themselves clearly and concisely, use I statements instead of you statements, and avoid blaming or attacking language. So this is a culture of accountability, which means when you come to a problem, your team needs to always understand first and foremost, what was my contribution to this problem? Did I have any contribution? Was it a small one? Was it a large one? So you want them to constantly come to this problem with I. And that starts with you as a leader. You come to these problems saying, here's what I could do better. Here's what I can do better. And ultimately, as the leader in your business, you are the final blame. Okay? And what I mean by that is, if you have somebody on your team that you're constantly blaming, it's your fault, it's you this, you showed up late, you did this, you didn't do that, then you as a leader, right, need to take the accountability and say, this is my responsibility, this is my business, this is my team, this is my culture. And what I need to do is I need to remove this person that I allowed in, okay? That's the best approach. You also want your team to see that constantly when you're saying, look, I might have to take matters into my own hand. I have to accept blame. I brought you onto the team. Then that makes them go, oh goodness, like my leader is now taking accountability for the fact that they let me, what they're thinking is a bad member, onto the team. Maybe I should do the same and take accountability. Okay, because it's really hard once you start taking accountability and allowing yourself to take blame for everything. You'll be surprised at how quickly people want you to pull the blame back to them. And you just don't do it. You just say, hey, no, this is my responsibility. I got to take care of it. And it inspires them to do the same, because they see the leader constantly taking responsibility upon themselves and saying, what could I do better? How could I be better at this? Even if the person did show up late, you are still tolerating them on your team. So ultimately, it is you. It is the I person, right? The leader in that business. That's I hope that's making sense. That ultimately falls the blame to. So take responsibility every opportunity you can, and your team will do the same. Okay, so you have to start by leading through example with that. Okay, encourage problem solving. In teaching resolution, problem solving skills are essential. Coaches must encourage their team members to focus on finding solutions instead of dwelling on the problem. This approach helps to create a sense of ownership and empowerment, leading to more harmonious relationships. Okay, so with your team, when you are trying to get them to solve problems, you need to encourage them to solve the problem themselves. You need to encourage that. And you need to give them room to mess up. Okay, you need to give them the room they need to fail. If you are constantly trying to mediate all the problems in your business, then you are going to be extremely overwhelmed very quickly. Your time is only supposed to be spent on problems that only you can solve. If your team can resolve the problem, then you must simply encourage them to do so, right? And give them the room. Maybe, again, you maybe don't like the resolution that they came up with. That's okay. That's okay that you may not like the resolution that they came up with. Is it an acceptable resolution is what I want to know. So allowing them to go through with it, it's better that they go through with a plan that they're committed to than for them to go through with what you think is the best plan, but they're not committed to it, right? So it's like we want them to be committed to the resolution, and if they come up with the resolution themselves, then that is exactly what we want. Have you ever seen the movie Inception, where they try to, they go in there, Leonardo DiCaprio and all these actors, this is a big time film, they try to plant the idea because they think, they know that if you come up with the idea yourself, right, then you are more likely to accept it and there's no rejecting that idea. So this is kind of what we're trying to do here, is get people to come up with their own ideas to resolve these problems and build that skill into them and make them be owners of it, and empower them to create their own problems, or excuse me, to create their own solutions to their problems, right? Because you don't need to be constantly mediating. You don't need to be constantly dealing with all of this stuff, okay? So encourage problem solving. Teach them how to resolve these problems. Teach them the things that I mentioned earlier, right? Like, let's talk about, like, okay, I hear you. I understand your emotions. I could see how that would be upsetting for you, you know, based off your perspective. And if you can't understand why it'd be upsetting for them, have them explain to you, like, why does this upset you? Like, I can't understand why this is upsetting you. Explain to me why this upsets you. And that is going to go a long way for you to just simply understand, oh, okay, I wouldn't have arrived at that place, but you did, okay? And I can see how you arriving at that place makes you upset. Focus on the interest, not the position. Focus on the end goals, and not necessarily how they're trying to accomplish that. Encourage active listening, both in yourself and in your team. Like, do you, and you can role play this, you can talk to your team members, but do you feel like you've actively listened to all the problems they have? Practice effective communication, meaning practice accountability, practice taking the blame, practice taking ownership of what you did to contribute to that situation, or what you didn't do to resolve that situation. There's two things there, right? It's like, I did this to contribute, or I didn't do this and that contributed, right? If you see someone doing something wrong and you don't do anything to stop them, in a sense, there is a level of accountability there for you, of like, yeah, I didn't necessarily encourage them to do it, but I also didn't stop them from doing it. I knew it was wrong. So encourage problem solving. Teach these people in your team how to solve the problems themselves, but then, massive piece, don't forget this, empower them. Empower them to do that. Let them make the mistakes. Let them mess it up. Provide them the feedback. Say, hey, this one's not going to work. Go back to the drawing board. Get another one, and I will help you guys with that, okay? Or I will back you guys up on that, right? But give them the space they need to build and do this on their own, and I promise you, it will go a long, long way for your company and your culture, most of all. All right, cool. So, guys, that is this week's live. I hope you found value. If you did, write in the comment section below, I found value in this. Send this to someone. Ultimately, if you found this valuable, send it to someone that you think would find it valuable, that you think is struggling with this, that you think needs help with this, okay? And let them go through this, because it always helps to have another perspective, kind of shed light on these particular issues. Again, if you're watching this on YouTube, please like, comment, subscribe. On Facebook, like, comment. And if you have questions, DM us. If you are interested in taking a step further, maybe seeing what more of an intimate relationship with us would look like, there's going to be, in the comment section of this video, there's going to be a link where you can go and schedule a call with us. And we'll go from there in terms of trying to see how we can help you, see if it's a good fit, to see if we can't resolve the issues that you're experiencing. If you want to scale your program, if you want to increase your profit, if you want to increase your impact, if you want to just get some more freedom back, maybe you've got those two things. Maybe you're doing great on impact and you're doing great on profit, but you just don't seem to have any time to yourself. Well, we need to scale up your team so that we can do that. All right, so if you feel like you're suffering with any of those issues, go ahead and schedule your call with us below in the comment section, and we'll get you rocking and rolling. In the meantime, I hope you guys found value in this video. Be on the lookout for next week's live, same time, Thursday, in this group, 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. We'll see you guys on the next one. All right, God bless. See you guys later. Bye.